Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we talk about problems people face in their day-to-day lives. Let's start with a video.
My wife and I got separated when our son was around 12 years old. She had been in an extramarital affair and then wanted to marry that person and was not ready to take our son with her, even when our son was gravely attached to her. It was I who took care of my son since then and made sure to provide him with the best life. I was always there and had been concerned since then, but my son could not build the bond with me that he had with his mom. He also sometimes used to blame me for our separation and would tell me that I was not able to take care of his mom, so she left us. I would never mind that, as I knew he had been dealing with so much at a very young age. As my son grew up and had to take admissions to college, he wished to get enrolled in one of the most expensive colleges, and I could not afford that. I had a small business that would only provide for a mediocre lifestyle. I also owned a house and a small plot. When I discussed that situation with my son and told him that I was not able to afford the expenses of such an expensive college, he told me that I could sell the plot and finance his degree. I had no other option, so I sold that plot and I got him enrolled in that college. Time passed and my son was able to land a well-paid job, which made me a proud dad. That was the time when my business had almost died. I asked my son if he could invest as much as he could so the business might start running at the previous pace, but he told me that he had no money to waste on a business that was going to fail anyway. I tried to talk to him a few more times, and then he told me that I should get a loan from the bank for my business. He also explained that once the business started profiting, I would be able to repay the loan. I listened to my son and I opted for the loan, but his idea failed miserably. My business did not move an inch, which meant that I was going to be bankrupt. I asked my son if he would help me repay the loan and I would give him his money back. That was when my son told me that he had landed a job in another state and was leaving soon. I could not believe him and was broken into pieces. My son left me in ruins and did not even contact me after that. My house got sold to pay creditors, and we can say that I ended up on the streets. I tried my best to contact my son, but could not reach him and had no idea to which state he had moved to. My life was saved by a long-lost friend of mine who somehow came across me and could not see me in the state I was in. He took me to his place and told me that I was going to stay with him. His wife had died, and he had 2 daughters. One of them had gotten married and the other was studying abroad. My friend was a well-settled businessman who dealt in real estate, so I told him I was going to go to work for him as I needed a job right away. He told me that I could join his office and work, but I had to learn about his business and could start my agency. I told him that I was too old to start a new business, but he kept insisting. I joined my friend's office and started working for him. It took me no time to understand how things worked in his business. 2 years later, my friend helped me to set up a small agency with a couple of workers, and that was the turning point of my life. Within a decade, I was able to turn that small agency into a full-fledged corporation that dealt in real estate and had a chain of small cafes in the city. I had built a huge house in a posh area of the city and owned a lot of property. My lifestyle was not that elite, but was far better than my son would have imagined. My son added me on Facebook and started praising me in comments, and we all know why. A couple of weeks after my son had added me on Facebook, he asked me if he could come and see me to talk about some important things. I asked him who he was and what he wanted, and he told me that I was being mean and how could I treat my son like that. I told him that I had no family, so he should stop embarrassing himself, and if he kept disturbing me, I might involve the cops. He didn't text me again, but I can sense why he's interested to see me and what he wants from me. My son called me and told me that I had to listen to him and could not abandon him like that. I had a hearty laugh and asked him if he had a memory loss because he was forgetting who had abandoned whom. He told me that he was sorry and had panicked due to the chaotic financial situation at that time. He went on and asked how did I expect him to stay and waste his time when I knew nothing could be done and we had no way left. I told him that there was a way, and it was that he could support me as he was the one who had sort of looted my property for his degree. He said that all parents have to pay for their children's education, and it was no big deal if I had sold my plot for his college. I told him that it was all I could do for him, and he should not expect anything else from me. My son started weeping and told me that he did not expect anything and only wanted to reunite with his dad. He told me that he was going to visit in a couple of weeks. I hung up without saying anything. I know my son, and I know that he is doing all that for something. He never contacted me when I was working for my friend, and not even when I had started an agency. But as he knows I'm established and well off, he wants to reunite that badly. My son arrived 3 weeks later and greeted me like he had found someone lost long ago. He was awestruck to see my house and told me that he was proud of me as I had started from scratch, and here I was. I told him that nothing was easy and the whole credit was for my friend who acted as family when my own family had ditched me. We had dinner and then my son retired to the guest room. The next morning he insisted to go to my office with me and I took him along. My son had stayed for a whole week and made sure to accompany me everywhere I would go. The day before he left, he told me that he wanted to discuss something but could not gather the courage. He told me that he wanted to know what I had decided regarding my will, as I was getting old day by day and the workload was massive. I told him that he was no one to worry about that, and I already knew what he was up to. I told him that he could go back, as clinging to me would not give him anything. He left the next day, and I hope he got what I tried to convey. I'm here with an update, and I guess my son is not willing to give up on his mission. He called me and asked me if he could send his kids to my place for summer vacation, as he was too busy and could not take them anywhere. I went on and said that they would be safe with their granddad, and also that he wanted his kids to bond with me as they had never met me before. I told him that it was a huge responsibility and I would be at work most of the time, but he had planned everything. He said that his wife was going to come along with the kids, and he would keep visiting. A week later, my grandchildren arrived along with their mom to stay at my place for the whole summer vacation. To be honest, I was glad to have him, but it felt like my son was trying to emotionally blackmail me. My son would visit every couple of weeks and stay for a day or two. One time when he was here, he told me that he was very worried about his kids' future as he did not earn enough to provide them with a great lifestyle. I also said that the company he was working in was not going well. I told him that it was his headache, and it was not easy for parents to raise kids as everyone has to go through that grind. My son met with my friend and told him that I was not ready to forgive him, even when he was embarrassed. He also said that he had made a mistake and wanted to mend it by reuniting, but I did not consider him a family anymore. My friend told my son that he would talk to me. My friend told me every word my son had uttered. I asked him how he could take my son's side when he knew how he had abandoned me and moved away without even telling me where he was going. I knew I had to knock some sense into my son's head. The next day, I told my son that he had to go back and that I never wanted to see him again. I told him that I could let his kids spend summer here and would send them back after vacations, but he was no longer allowed in my house. He said that I was the worst parent and was left alone because I never deserved a family. I told him that if he did not leave with his family right away, I would get them kicked out. I also told him that if he tried to contact me again, I was going to get a restraining order against him. He left with his family, and I'm glad he has not contacted me after that. NTA, this was literally what you were supposed to do, so there is nothing to be embarrassed about. Your son deserved this reaction and has to deal with it. Kudos to your motivation and hard work, as it is not easy to establish when one had already failed terribly. A lot of willpower and resolution are needed to succeed like that. Also, your friend's support was commendable. NTA, OP's son is a shameless and worthless a-hole who has no self-respect and probably has lost his memory. He was the most horrible son a man could have. Made his dad sell his plot for the degree when he could have achieved a scholarship if he was that determined to go to that college. Then left his dad when he needed him the most, and now he's back to discuss his dad's will. Bullshit.
Next story.
So, before I talk about the dilemma, let me talk about my background. I'm a 24-year-old guy and grew up living in group homes. If you don't know what a group home is, it's basically a smaller orphanage. Living in a group home was rough. We generally weren't guaranteed meals, and we shared literally everything. So if we got new clothes, we had 10 other kids fighting over it. If we got pizza, we had 10 kids fighting over it. When I was 11, I became close with this kid from school. He invited me over to his house for a couple of sleepovers, and his parents would notice how much I was eating. I would completely pig out despite being relatively skinny. There were a couple of other things they noticed about how I behaved that was very weird. They realized I was probably being underfed and decided to take action. Eventually they took me in and I never looked back. So today I'm 24 and I'm working a nice desk job. I'm generally happy and I'm still close with my adopted parents. My bio parents reached out 2 weeks ago and were relieved when I responded. We ended up setting up a meeting yesterday. I was already quite hesitant to meet them, but only did because my mom and dad said it could be worthwhile. So we sat down and talked over lunch. They told me they gave me up because they didn't want to be parents. They were in their mid-20s and married. The only reason they gave me up was because they weren't ready for parenthood. After this, I pretty much gave up on being civil and I started making snide comments like, "Oh, so I was ready for group homes?" I was being pretty rude and my bio mom was fighting tears. After they told me I have a brother, I said, "Oh, okay, so you were ready enough to be a parent, but weren't ready enough to check on your son." I had paid enough and left. I was very angry and told my adopted mom what happened. She said I should go easy on them since it probably took a lot to reach out and apologize. She went on and on about how she'll support me no matter what, but she thinks I'm acting a bit harsh. My bio parents called and asked if we could meet them again and talk more. My mom thinks that it could be beneficial now that my initial emotions are out there. If I think I was acting like an a-hole and my mom thinks I'm acting like an a-hole, I probably am an a-hole. AITA? I'm meeting them again this Friday. This time, my mom is coming with me. I let them hear my perspective, and now I'm going to do my best to listen and hear them out. I think my mom being there will make it a lot easier. She's a calming presence, and I'd hate for her to see me lose my temper. Also, a couple of people suggested developing a relationship with my half-brother, and I'm vehemently against that for a couple of personal reasons. NTA, I'm an adoptive mom too, and I would guess your mom is worried that you're burning bridges when you might realize that you want or need, do you have all of your medical history, to connect with your bio family later in life. That's your call though. You're an adult and your feelings, whatever they are valid. You absolutely don't owe your bio family a relationship. If you haven't though, you might want to consider seeing an adoption and trauma-informed therapist because you don't deserve to carry around the burden of pain and anger. NTA, they literally failed as humans. They dumped you into the system for convenience. I would be outraged. There are lots of very genuine reasons to give children up for adoption, and I respect those that make that decision for the right reasons. What did they expect? Your response was spot on. They decided a baby was ready for a group home. I'm so glad that my family chose you and loved you and clearly still do. Keep working hard and make sure to have an absolutely wonderful life.
Next story.
I have 3 kids, twins 23, male and female, Ella and Stephen, and John, 17. John was the result of me cheating on Ella and Stephen's father, Rob, with John's father, Harry. Harry ran away after he found out I was pregnant. Rob found out about the affair 3 years later. The kids were still young, so we didn't tell them the truth about why we divorced at the time. Rob still loved John and cared for him, which surprises me considering John isn't his biological son. Harry came back into contact with me when John was 10, and although I was a little bitter, I eventually forgave him, and we fell in love and got married. They didn't dislike Harry, but they weren't close with him, which in John's case hurt Harry since he is John's real father. It became bad when John was 16. Harry wanted to do something with John, but John said no. Harry snapped and said that they never spent time as father and son, which caused John to say, "Look, I don't hate you or anything, but I don't see you as my dad, so stop trying to force me to see you as him. I have a dad and he's not you." I couldn't take it anymore, and I asked John if he would be saying that if he, Harry, was really his father. John looked confused, and it was then that I told him the truth, and that his behavior was hurting Harry. That caused John to cry, and he ran to his room. Ella went to comfort him, and Stephen glared at me and said, "I hope you're happy you broke that poor kid because of your butthurt feelings. It's been a year since then, and I think my kids forgave me, but still aren't close with Harry. Recently, it was Harry's birthday, and he wanted me and John to spend it with him. John, however, decided that he wanted to watch a movie with his friend. I told him that Harry wants to spend time with him. He said he's going anyway, and I'm free to ground him when he gets back. When John got back, I told him that his behavior towards Harry is horrible. He told me that he's nice to Harry, but that Rob is his dad. I asked what the point of me telling him the truth, if he was just going to be like this. He snapped, "Don't act like you told me the truth for my sake. You told me the truth out of spite and jealousy because I wouldn't see your affair partner as my dad. And to be frank, I still don't. So your little plan didn't work." And he went to his room. My older kids got wind of what happened and they called to berate me and told me to stop pushing John to love Harry. I told him that I get that John loves Rob, but Harry is his blood father. Ella told me I'm wrong, that Rob is the one who raised John, therefore, Rob is his father. Stephen said he's going to rescue his bro the minute he turns 18, which is in a few weeks. I tried to get Rob to talk to John, but he said he wasn't forcing his son to love Harry. I just don't understand. Am I really wrong for wanting my son to love his blood father? AITA? Reddit? What a shitty mother and person you are. I hate to break it to you, but Rob is John's father. He raised him. How do you expect your kid to want anything to do with the man who broke up their family? I'm surprised they even speak to you, frankly. YTA.